What really changes when guys leave the game is they want to be able to maintain the lifestyle that they had when they were playing the game.
Welcome back to Common Denominator. Today's guest is someone who embodies that idea in a very real way. Kelvin Beachum is a 14-year NFL veteran, an offensive lineman currently with the Arizona Cardinals, and one of the most respected leaders in professional football. Drafted in the 7th round, Kelvin built a career that defied expectations, starting nearly 200 games across the Steelers, Jaguars, Jets, and Cardinals. He's a 3-time nominee for the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year Award and was named the Arizona Cardinals 2025 Walter Payton Man of the Year for his impact off the field. Kelvin is also an author, a philanthropist focused on hunger relief and literacy, and someone who intentionally lives with discipline. So whether you're into football, business, faith, or simply becoming more intentional about how you live your life, this episode has something for you.
Valuing others' time actually does start to pay dividends in different ways over time.
Tell me about your journey of faith and where are you right now and how does it help you?
So I've been around the faith for a long time. When it became real was in college, when I had to go off and be on my own, because I know there are certain things that I just can't do and will not be able to do on my own.
Hi, Kelvin. Welcome to Common Denominator.
Thanks so much for having me.
The name of the show is Common Denominator, and when I think of your background and everything that you've been through, what would you say for you is the common denominator before football, during football, and what you see in the future when you're reflecting within yourself?
Number one being the willingness, ability, and urgency to always show up. So showing up being number one. And secondly, being obsessed with the concept of time. Own time is something that I care a lot about, but also valuing time, not only my time, but also the time of others. And when, you go through life, whether that's in football, business, philanthropy, faith, what have you, valuing others' time actually does start to pay dividends in different ways over time.
Did you always have that? I love what you said, that urgency of showing up. I find it so important, both of those, time and showing up. I know that that's process before substantive, before the thing that you're doing, taking a step back. Were you always like that, or was there something in your life that said, you know what, boom, this was a major failure, and now I begin the process? And was there like a mentor or somebody that said, you know what, Kelvin, you got to start showing up?
For me, I had a phenomenal grandfather who's still living. I was just with him this past weekend. Will be 99 in August. Had a phenomenal father who I got to spend some time with this weekend as well. And both men model that in their everyday life on a consistent basis. Showing up for their families, showing up at work, showing up in the church, showing up as men. That was something that I got to see on a consistent basis. So there was not an event that occurred in that regard, but I got an opportunity to see that real time and got to experience it on a much deeper level. And then the same with time. My grandfather, I mentioned he's been blind for now 78 years. And even at this point in time, he cares about his time and he cares about the time of others. So for me, those two concepts are, I would say, almost embedded in my DNA, because that was what I grew accustomed to being around and experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And I think those two things have now helped me, shape me, inform the decision-making as I've come into, the world of sports, the world of business, now being a dad, in that own right myself. My daughter has a Peter Pan recital this weekend, and again, it's showing up, and it's now showing up for my children and the things that they're embarking on. So, for me, it didn't have like this awakening that happened where, hey, all of a sudden you need to embody these principles and these concepts. But for me, it was seeing it on an everyday basis from people that were very, very close to me, where I got to see it lived out, walked out on a consistent basis.
Where did you grow up, and was your friendship circle growing up, was it also people that took things seriously as teenagers? Because I know as teenagers we can get involved in a lot of stupid things. Did you see that from your friend group, or were you just working and was football just your journey?
You know, where I grew up, it's about 6,500 people. So it's a small town called Mojave, Texas. It's about an hour and a half south of Dallas. So it wasn't a big city by any means. The friendship group that I had, I still hold to this day. Chad High, Paul Burkhead, Josh Chambers, you know, those are my guys. And it's interesting, my dad was my AAU coach. So during the summer, you know, you have AAU basketball. So that's, you know, basketball played throughout the summer. My dad was the coach and my friends were my teammates. So it was one of those things where we were doing things all together. So played ball with Chad, played ball with Josh, football with Paul. So it was one of those things where it was just kind of symbiotic. And the country living is just much different than, you know, living in the city. Can't really speak to what that's like, but there in the country, the values I feel are just a little different. I would say things are a little slower. You know, there in the country, it's only two real stoplights in my hometown. So getting where you need to go, you can get where you need to go as long as you need to be there on time. But the teenage and kind of adolescent years, I had friends that were about doing the right things. Now, I'm not going to say I was perfect or my friends were perfect. We all did teenage things. We all did adolescent things. But I would say more times than not, we were where we needed to be when we needed to be there. But I think sports and that camaraderie that comes with it forges some of those things to happen organically, and was fortunate that I had, you know, friends that are still lifelong friends to this day that were part of that journey, where we got to embark on sports and on life together and got to, you know, like I said, you know, participate with some of those concepts in play. Basketball, track, football, although we were in band together. So, you know, we were part of the state percussion team that went to the state finals of percussion, me, Chad, and Paul. So it was one of those things where we were together quite a bit and did a lot of life together early on.
Because I've seen great talent, and I've interviewed on the show great talent, and literally the difference of the results that happen is, and they have that, it's a cliche, is the top 5 people that you're around, right? In your case, your grandfather, your father, your friends, right? And they all good, solid people. And I'm sure that you've seen in the football, after, you know, 14 years playing in the NFL. Just curious, what is the typical amount of time, the average years that an NFL player plays?
2.5 to 3 years is the average of what, you know, an NFL career kind of embodies. So you would say kind of that 25 to 26 is when age range is when, you know, the career starts to tap out, starts to taper in that particular regard.
So probably, you know, 14 years, tremendous. What would you say is the X factor to have really lasted that long in the NFL with all these young players coming out?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned this earlier. You talked about great talent and the great talent that you have and have had on the show. You know, I was talking about IQ the other day with a couple of friends, and it was like, you know, you're smart, and I was like, no, it's not. It's not really smart. It's the willingness. I keep going back to that word, willingness. It's the willingness to work hard, and it's the willingness to work hard over a sustained amount of time. And when I look at my career, it's the willingness to allow that work to work for you over a sustained amount of time. In this profession, you have to fall in love, and I say this quite a bit, you have to fall in love with the mundane, because there are certain things that are part of this profession that are the exact same on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. From the time that you show up in late July until the time you get knocked out of the playoffs in late or early January, what have you, it is the same thing over and over and over. It's this cycle of repetition that continues to happen week in and week out. And if you don't fall in love with that mundane, you'll get spit out because it's not changing. the world of football, week 1 to week 18, or however many weeks we playing now, week 19, it is the same thing. So when I look at, my career and some of the things and what I attribute it to, it's not so much talent, which talent does play a role. I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't play a role. But in this profession, everybody is talented. You mentioned Miami and Indiana, who's playing. Everybody on both teams are talented, but it will only be a few that go to the next level from those two teams. And from that few that get to the next level, it only will be a few that make it past that average career, because everybody's talented. Injuries happen, but it's the willingness. What are you willing to do? And it's the willingness to want to work when others don't want to work. And it's the willingness to sustain that over countless hours, countless days, countless weeks, countless months, countless years, and allowing that to compound over time.
I love that. I know that generally when you look at the humans naturally lazy and they need motivation. What is your why, or what is your motivation? I know that you said you saw it from your grandfather, your father, but for you, right? That's boring, right? Mundane. And people don't realize that mundane, everybody wants to get rich quick. Everybody wants the thing quickly. Behind it is a process. Everything slow and steady. Every single service, sport, everything I've seen, everything. But nobody wants to accept that what you just said, Kelvin, is the truth. Because that's what I've seen. That's where I've seen the most actual results on the highest level, is being okay with that mundane over a very long period of time and showing up extremely with the same energy over it every day, always. So what is that for you? What is that why for you?
Before I get to the why, I think you have to understand that you have to be okay with delayed gratification, which this is what this is. And, whatever career path, that just has to be something that you're okay with, just delayed gratification first and foremost. The why for me has changed as I've evolved as an individual. When I was a single man playing in the National Football League, all I wanted to do was play to make enough money so my parents didn't have to work anymore. Only to find out that I made enough money and my parents still want to work. My grandfather still wants to work. My dad still wants to work. So it's like the why has now changed. You start having kids. Not that you're playing for them, but it gets to a point where it's the money isn't the conversation anymore. Like, all right, well, I want to play to provide for my kids. Well, you're playing in the National Football League. As it pertains to Americans and what Americans are making on a yearly basis, it's not even close in that particular regard. So again, the why has now changed. So for me, it really is, I wouldn't say a fleeting concept, but it's something that was important to me. I was the last offensive lineman drafted in the 2012 draft. I was 248. And, my head is jacked up like this, where I've tracked every single person from that draft class, and it's only two people standing that are left in that particular draft class. It's me and a guy by the name of Zeitler, who plays for the Tennessee Titans right now. I wouldn't say that that's the why, but I love the competition of competing and finding ways to compete with myself. So for me, the why continues to evolve, because I'm one of those folks that I continue to move the goalposts. Whereas, hey, there's this external motivation that's moving the goalposts. No, I'm moving the goalposts. So the why continues to change. But for me, it's the narrative that I'm most interested in being able to debunk and being able to change. And it's a stereotype that I'm excited to blast out and be able to come out of the box that sometimes you get put in. So as a 7th-round pick, you're only supposed to do X. You're only supposed to play here. You're only supposed to play this long. You defy that stereotype. All right, well, you're only supposed to get this type of contract. All right, you defy that stereotype. Now I'm a dinosaur in my profession. I'm 36 playing right tackle. Oh, he's only supposed to play this much. He can only have this many snaps. It's the willing. Again, I keep going back to that word willingness. It's the willingness to want to do things that people are not willing to do, even at this age, which I hate to keep going back to that same word, but it's something about that word willingness, because it really transcends any of those things. Even as I go into business, it's the willingness to want to do things that people don't want to do, travel to places people don't want to travel to, have conversations about culture. in cultures and about cultures that people don't want to have a conversation with. It's the willingness to want to shake somebody's hand after, they just stabbed you in the back. Like it's those types of things that are sometimes hard, but sometimes needed to be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. I know that didn't answer the question of why, but to answer it, it continues to evolve as life continues to evolve.
And probably the evolution, what would you say, as you're saying 36 years old, from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the training, right, to be peak performance for what you got to show up to, has that changed, or you're still every day that routine has been the same, or has there been material changes in the physical training that you've been doing?
There's been material changes in what the body can handle as I've gotten older because of how many snaps I've had to take over the years. Does the training still consist, and is there still consistency in the training? Yes, but the way in which I've trained at 24 is completely different than the training that I had at 34. Rest is something that has become paramount to what I'm doing now. Recovery has become something that's paramount. And I would say over the last, probably 4 to 5 years, I've realized that less is more. Now it's being more strategic of when I'm using that, knowing that there is this undulation that has to happen with the body and the training that has to peak as the season is peaking. Knowing that I don't need to be top form, the best as I walk in the training camp. I need to understand that there is, and I'm a slow cooker. When I barbecue, I love to slow cook barbecue. And it's going back to what you mentioned, it's the slow process that has to take place where there is this gradual undulation that is continuing to happen as the season progresses, knowing that as the season wears on, I need to be getting better as the season wears on. So the training that takes place in the off season is preparing me for that. So then I would say, am I squatting like I did when I was 24 and back squatting and power cleaning and Olympic lifting? No, there's just some modalities and some modifications that have now had to take place to be able to get the best out of the body as we currently sit. Now, understanding where we want to be able to get the body to be performing at in the future. So there has been some changes, some material changes, but I would say more modifications versus these holistic changes. The same trainer that I started using back in 2013 is the same trainer that I use today. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, when can I start the off season? Like, when can I start lifting again? This is, we got knocked out, we were done with football last weekend, wild card weekend was last weekend. So going on 2 weeks, I was like, hey, can I come in tomorrow? He was like, no, you cannot touch another weight for a couple more weeks. But I'm like, my off seasons are crazy. Traveling starts to pick up. It's like, no, you're not touching weights. So it's having that type of trust where I've been working with the same people for over a decade. And there's something about the process of getting ready that they understand, hey, there are certain things that he can do and certain things that he can't do. And they've prepared my body mentally and physically and emotionally to deal with some of the things that are just what it is at 36, which was completely different when I was, 24, 25.
So many people that I meet in the gym, they're going hard at the weights, and I've seen that, right? They're going hard. And you mentioned about recovery, the awareness, how much of recovery is sleep, right? How much, whether it's an infrared sauna or cold plunge or just whatever the modalities are of recovery, they're probably, let's just say after 35, probably as important for even everyday people as going in, and hitting the weights hard in the gym, right? It's long-term, again, delayed gratification, like you said. And so many people just put in the same focus, same being present as going hard in the gym as recovery. This is non-negotiable. I'm going to bed at 10 p.m. It's just non-negotiable. It's just what's happening. So I'm 45 and I see so many people, they just don't have that. And I think it's hard. Tell me, I know you're a man of faith, and I know for me, it gives me strength when I don't have strength, when I need it in my meditations and things that things that I need to accomplish, but I just can't find that. Tell me about your journey of faith and where are you right now and how does it help you?
So I mentioned my grandfather. Grandfather's been my pastor since I was born. So he's been pastoring for 46, 47 years. My dad is the assistant pastor. My mother is a Sunday school teacher and a praise and worship leader. So I've been around the faith for a long time. When it became real was in college, when I had to go off and be on my own. It became very real. When I got into the National Football League, it became even more real. So where I see my faith at now is, now being a shepherd of my home, is it taking on kind of new responsibilities. Not responsibilities of like, I need to author my faith, but knowing how important it is to the journey that I'm now on. You're catching me right after I've gotten out of a consecration last week. So from Thursday at 8 o'clock up until Sunday at 2 p.m., I was in my home church, shut in, fasting, no food, water, and a Bible, and my journal, and 2 books, Intentional Father, and Lead with Prayer. Like those, literally, I just got done taking the stuff out of my briefcase, just got home last night. So for me, it's just become even more important and more paramount to where I am in life, because I know there are certain things that I just can't do and will not be able to do on my own. I mentioned playing Year 14. There were many times I was just golfing with a couple buddies after I came out yesterday. They're outside of Fort Lauderdale. We're all the same age. Beachum, how old are you? 36. How old are you? 36, 35. Why the hell are you still playing? It's a lot of prayer, man. It's a lot of prayer. Praying before the game, praying during the week, praying during recovery. It's become innate. I mentioned the word kind of DNA. Is just, I can't do this without being connected to the source, to be honest with you. So it is paramount to my career. It's paramount to my business career. It's paramount to my family. It's paramount just to daily life. And it's become just how I move, how I operate, and just how I get from point A to point B, to be honest with you. So where the faith is right now is still a work in progress. Not saying I'm perfect by any means, but I work at it. And I try to show up to be engaged as often as I possibly can.
I see this issue a lot with a lot of professional players as far as organizing their finances and what happens after they retire, right? You were saying the average is 2.5, 3 years for the players. What do you think, I don't know if you've ever put any thought into it, to be conservative with their spending, to get knowledgeable about their finances? What mechanism? Maybe there's some sort of, magic bullet or some sort of way for the players to not have a high stat of bankruptcy, and just really hone in. And you have to have that knowledge of your own personal finances. What can be done, and what have you seen?
I think fundamentally you have to get back to the fundamentals, which is managing your expenses. My parents raised me on $30,000 a year. So since I've come into the National Football League, and it wasn't until this year where I raised my monthly expenses up to $7,000 a month. For the longest, we had it at $5,000. We have a very simple house. I got simple cars. I spend more money putting it to work. I wouldn't even say spending money. I invest more of the money putting it to work and allowing it to work for me versus, forcing it to go out the door. So, I really believe that when athletes take control of actually understanding how much they're spending, we won't be having the conversations that we're having now, because what really changes when guys leave the game is they want to be able to maintain the lifestyle that they had when they were playing the game. Well, the question that I always go back to is, can you live and start to produce a lifestyle that is very normal now? So when you do transition, the lifestyle is very similar. Instead of having that undulation that we talked about from a performance standpoint, how do you find a way to have just this base level of, this is what I'm going to spend every month. I look at the everyday American. I mentioned the everyday American conversation and what the everyday American makes, somewhere, north of 150 or so. And how can you live like that? Now, there will be things that you splurge on that are, you know, hey, I want to go on a vacation. Hey, I want to go and travel. Treat yourself. But at the same time, there has to be a point where you're living life much like you were living life if you were not playing this sport. And that was something that my dad drilled into me well before I got to the National Football League was if you make it there, like, keep it simple. Like, live like you have no money. And there was a coach that I had in college, Frank Gans, who would always talk about work like you have no money. So if you work like you have no money and you live like you have no money, you'll be able to have money for a very long time. It goes back to the conversation we mentioned earlier of the delayed gratification concept. Because if you're thinking about and planning for this life to be something that you live for the next, hopefully we make it to 60, 70, 80 years old, and hopefully be able to pass something down to the next generation, you have to take this mindset of like, live below your means and maintain that as long as you possibly can. And it's been fruitful for me. And it's interesting. I usually gravitate to guys that also think, spend, and operate in that same particular fashion. So I'm able to learn from them. They're able to learn from me. We're able to give advice on things that, we're working on. One of the guys I was golfing with yesterday, we were just talking about trust and how to make sure that our houses are in trust to make sure that they're protected. Like, I mean, we're, just having conversations about, all right, do you have it in Montana? You have yours in Wyoming. Which one are you thinking? Why are you thinking that instead of, you got your business? All right, your business is out of Delaware. Why, how you have yours layered? All right, you got your whole co. All right, where your LLC? I mean, like, just thinking about all those different things that are essential, but if you're not having the basic conversations of being in a position to have leverage with your capital, how will you then be able to operate and do the things that you desire to do long term? Kids, 529 setup, they maxed out. Cool, perfect. All right, well, how do we move on to the next? Like, how do you think about those things that are necessary to having longevity within this sport, but not only within the sport, but after this game is over? Because there is one thing that is for certain: you will not get to play this game forever. It's just not humanly possible. So you can be an artist, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be in real estate, you can be in private equity, you can be in those things until you 60, 70, 80 years old. You cannot play in the National Football League. It's probably not wise to play past 40. I mean, even though you have people that have played past 40. But playing this game, as violent as it is for that long, just isn't humanly possible consistently across, the chasm of the game.
And I know that it's become really important to you to kind of mentor the young players. What does that mean for you at this stage of your career?
Serving them as best I can. Talking about what we just talked about, talking about finances. Hey, a teammate already has a house. He's thinking about buying another house. Well, why are you thinking about buying that house? How much is that house? Is it going to return capital? Are you using it as an asset, or is it like an ego piece? Like, how are you thinking about it? Hey, Kelvin, I'm thinking about going into real estate. All right, well, here are some of the things you need to be thinking about. Here are some of the questions you need to be asking. Here are some of the podcasts you need to be listening to. Here are some of the people you need to go and chat with. All right, well, I want to look at commercial. All right, well, you want to look at commercial? Who are the people you need to be, studying in commercial? Who are the funds that have done really well on the commercial side of the equation? All right, well, who are the second tier funds? All right, who are the small operators? All right, well, I want to get into tech. All right, well, who are the books and where are the books and who are the people you need to be spending time studying? Where can you go and shadow? Where can you go and get mentorship? Where can you go and intern? That would give you insight into some of those things before you actually put capital to work. One of the great things about playing in the National Football League is everybody will take your call right now. Leverage it. So it's, for me, being of service to the younger generation, knowing that there are things, pitfalls, questions that need to be considered as they're going through this journey. The things that I learned from through osmosis. I had a great locker room when I got to Pittsburgh. Had great older players that taught me a ton about life, about business, about family, that transitioned to where I'm at this point in my career. I'm no longer the alpha dog in the locker room, and I am completely fine with that. I am here to serve the next generation and know I am positioned well to be able to do that.
Kelvin's big adventure. So tell us a little bit about that.
You mentioned earlier about staying curious. And Kelvin's big adventure is really about staying curious, especially for young people who, coming from where I came from in Moshe, Texas, you don't get exposed to a lot of opportunities. But if you're willing to be curious, it can literally take you all over the world. So the Kelvin's big adventure literally takes you, to Lusaka, Zambia, takes you to Mumbai, India, takes you to Hong Kong, and some of these experiences that I've had the opportunity to embark upon. And it's just the ability and the willingness to want to stay curious.
And what does it look like for you? As you said, at some point, you're going to have to hang up your jersey. What are you looking forward to personally? Where does your passions outside of football lie?
First and foremost, being able to take my kids to school on a consistent basis, that'd be nice. Seeing them when they get out of school, that'd be nice. So first and foremost, actually being able to participate in being a dad. Secondly, man, I spent a ton of time within the private equity ecosystem. I spent, time interning, shadowing at a number of different firms up and down the capital structure, venture, growth stage, private equity, where I've started to get a taste of what it's like up and down the capital structure. So for me, that is where I'll be spending the bulk of my time. It's been cool to travel the world, but it's even more interesting to travel how capital moves in different parts of the world. We think what we have here in America is the best thing ever. You go to Europe, there's a way in which they do it there in Europe. You go to the Middle East, there's a way in which they do it in the Middle East. You go to South America, there's a way in which they do it in South America. You go to the Far East, Southeast Asia, there's a way in which they do it in Southeast Asia. So being able to study how capital moves in different parts of the world is something that I'm keenly interested in. And then being able to partner with some of the folks in those regions to be able to be a part of this global economy that we get to participate in. So have been fortunate and blessed to spend time with a number of great firms and great folks within the private equity ecosystem that have shown me what it's like to be in this full time. So for me, that is where I will be once, this is all said and done. And then building out that process, building out that routine, building out that rhythm that allows me to do this consistently over time, allows me to show up, allows me to value time, and then allow that to compound over time. And hopefully, allows me to make and do things that I never thought I could be, doing. Thought that, playing in the National Football League would be the highlight, but that's just the first chapter, hopefully in a series of chapters that gets to take place over the coming years.
Yeah, I think the private equity space is tremendously exciting. There's a lot of really amazing innovations and ideas. I always say it's just a matter of just always staying curious. I think I want to learn. You humble yourself and you tell people, I'm here to learn. I'll do whatever it takes. I had a player, former NBA player, call me the other day, and that's what I had told him. I said, just stay humble. I said, you're not. Don't even think about you being that person. You've got to go back to school. Listen to, like you said, listen to these podcasts, read these books, humble yourself. Take someone for coffee and talk to them and learn. Learn like same way you learned how to dribble, learn. I want to say congratulations on the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. That's a big accomplishment. What does it mean to you when you're sitting by yourself? What does that mean to you?
I got to show up for a number of different people in a number of different cities, and it's been recognized at this point in my career because I've continued to show up for these individuals. For me, the award isn't what I'm after. It's the ability to continue to do the work in the community and do it at a much higher level due to the accolades or the accomplishments that have been laid upon me in this particular regard. So for me, what the award means is just this, again, I hate to keep saying the same word, but this willingness to want to go and serve the communities that I'm a part of, that I'm surrounded by, and the communities that are both near and beyond, those that are here domestically and internationally. So excited about the opportunity to continue to do that, excited about the honor that has been bestowed on me, and really just excited about the experience that'll take place there at NFL Honors in the coming weeks.
It's amazing. Kelvin, what would you say is the common denominator of people that show up consistently with action over time?
I think it's really about want to. Like it sounds very cliche, but I think it's really about want to. Something that you want to do and something that you're willing to do over and over and over and over. Sometimes the common denominator is something that's very, very simple. It's wanting to just do the right thing over and over and over and over again. And you'd be surprised if you allow that to be kind of the North Star in some respects. It can take you very far.
Well, Kelvin, I want to say thank you so much. It's really been an honor and a pleasure. I want to wish you all the best with your family, with the team, and with your future ventures. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying Common Denominator, make sure to hit like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a review and share the podcast with a friend for more stories that inspire, challenge, and connect us all. We appreciate you listening.